everyone, Kareem Ray here, and today I have the pleasure of interviewing Peter Wilt, who is the managing partner, president, and CEO at Chicago House Athletic Club. Peter, thank you for taking the time for joining us today. How's it going?
Terrific. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I know that's just one club that you've created, but there's other clubs that you have been a part of. If you don't mind, could you mention them all?
I'll do my best. I started working in soccer in the late 80s with the Milwaukee Wave, and I had a second run with them in 2009 as their president and CEO, general manager. But the teams that I launched were pretty much every professional soccer team in the Midwest, certainly in Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So first division teams are Chicago Fire and Chicago Red Stars. Second division team, Indy 11. And Minnesota Thunder was a second division team at the time. They've since evolved into a first division team, Minnesota United. Third division team, Forward Madison. Semi-pro teams, Green Bay Voyagers. Chicago House began as a third division team and is now a semi-pro team in the Midwest Premier League. By extension, I was involved in the start of Chicago Fire Premier, Chicago Fire's old PDL team. So I've started a number of teams in the Midwest.
Understood. So how did you get involved in the beautiful game?
Oh gosh, I was working in minor league hockey in Milwaukee in the early 80s, the Milwaukee Admirals. It's kind of where I learned the trade by doing a little bit of everything: ticket sales, sponsor sales, promotion, community relations. And I got as high as I could in that organization. And the indoor soccer team, the Milwaukee Wave, was looking for someone to run their publicity and sales departments, marketing really. And they hired me from the Admirals. And that's where I kind of started to learn soccer. And from there, I went to the Chicago Power, the indoor team that played at the Rosemont Horizon, now Allstate Arena, Chicago. We had a great coach and player in Pato Marhetic, and won the NPSL championship at the time. And that NPSL was the indoor league, top indoor league in the country at the time, and was GM there for 4 years. And after a short stint with the league office of the Continental Indoor Soccer League, I went to Minnesota to launch the Minnesota Thunder as a pro team. They'd been an indoor team. I'm sorry, they'd been an amateur team up to that point. And so with players like Tony Sana and Manny Lagos and Amos McGee, Gerard Lagos, we had quite a bit of success on and off the field there before the Chicago MLS project hired me, and we launched what later became the Fire in 1997.
Understood. So, a long track record and within the sports industry, now focused on the soccer business side of things for a while now. I want to highlight something that Paul Burney, currently working with Pacific FC, said. You want to be a jack of all trades and learn a little bit of everything to understand everything. Would you say that's fair?
Well, I mean, it's up to the individual what their goals are. If you want to oversee and run a team, absolutely. The best thing that probably ever happened in my career is being rejected by 23 of 24 Major League Baseball teams coming out of college, because the one that did not reject me was the Montreal Expos. By the way, I didn't speak French, so I didn't send them a resume, but everyone else rejected me, which was good because they would have certainly pigeonholed me as a ticket salesperson, and that's all I would have learned. And I probably would have been, churned and burned and out of there in a year or two. Instead, I landed with the Milwaukee Admirals, small organizations. I got my hands on everything. I had not taken sports management courses in school. I think there may have been one or two sports management programs in the country. Ohio University was the one I can think of. So the only way to learn was to do it. And in a minor league organization, you're able to do all those tasks. And I wasn't good at all of them. Certainly, game operations, I was not good at all at. I think because I stress in those situations on game day. But I learned what it's about, and I learned about marketing and community engagement and ticket sales and sponsor sales and everything else. And so that gave me the knowledge of what other people are challenged with. So eventually, when I became a general manager, I understood what qualities it took to be good at each particular position. It helped with my hiring um, abilities, knowing what qualities to look for and what resources to provide each of those departments.
Understood. What would you say are the top three skills that you have um, in your space?
Mhm. I think anyone needs to be good at communication. They need to have good character. Um, they need to have innate talent, uh, and they need to have good work rate, good work ethic. I think I have varying degrees of quality in each of those. Um, I think maybe my greatest asset is my ability to judge talent. And so I've traditionally been able to surround myself with some really good people, not just talented, but hardworking, good character, and good communicators.
Understood. Yeah, being around good characters is very important. Trust, transparency, integrity, honesty. What are three things that you look for when you're hiring somebody?
Well, I just said it. It's really four. I look
Cool.
for talent, character, work ethic, and communication ability. I originally had three. I added good communication skills in 2015. I had a job shadow one day when I was with Indy 11. It was a professor from the sports management program at Ball State University in Muncie, Indiana. And uh, after giving her my thoughts about those three important qualities, she respectfully suggested that I add good communication abilities. And I agreed with her.
Understood. Diving into club ownership, um, what was the first club that you founded, and what was the reason behind it?
Yeah, it was the Minnesota Thunder, and the Thunder had already existed as an amateur team, but I started them as a professional team. And the reasoning was this was a collection of really talented high school soccer players that had played together for, uh, um, oh gosh, in some cases, I think they played together for about 10 years at that point. They were all approaching their senior year in college and had been together at St. Paul Academy or at Minneapolis West Side Soccer Club and the Blackhawks Soccer Club. And uh, Mr. Lagos, Buzz Lagos, had been their coach. And he had taken them as far as they could go as an amateur team. They recognized that there was an opportunity to fill the professional space in Minnesota, that there was an audience for a high level, good quality team. And I had known Mr. Lagos and a gentleman named Tom Engstrom, who was the co owner of the Thunder. And they invited me to become their first president and general manager and co owner of the team. It was apparent to me that they had all the assets needed to be successful. At the time, we joined the USISL, which has evolved into the USL today, and we were successful on the field and off the field. We led the league. At the time, the league had 64 professional teams, varying degrees of professional, I suppose. And then by my last year there in '97, uh, we were part of what was called the A League, which is a subset of the USISL. And the second division had been sanctioned by US Soccer, and we were one of the top teams on the field in that. And then off the field, we led the league in attendance, and that helped position me to be recruited by the Chicago MLS team to start the Fire.
Wow. MLS. What year was that? And I've spoke to Mark Washoe. He was there, you know, in the beginnings of MLS. So that'd be a pretty interesting story to tap into a little bit. And
Sure. So MLS, their first year was '96, and that's when Mark was at DC United with some great folks, including Kevin Payne, obviously, Michael Hitchcock, Jamie O'Connor, um, Stephen, and so many more. And Chicago did not have a team in the first year because they couldn't reach terms with Soldier Field to be the venue. There was disagreements on the advertising for in-stadium signage, so that delayed it 2 years. So the Chicago team started in 1998. I was recruited as a first employee. Started late June 30th, 1997. We had 8 9 months to launch, which is a relatively short time when you think of the long ramps that the expansion teams are given nowadays. But I just visited all 10 teams, existing MLS teams, and I learned what not to do, frankly, from most of the teams. And I learned what to do from DC United. DC United was doing Steven Zach. Sorry, I couldn't think of Steven's last name earlier. Uh, he was a big help. Kevin Payne was a big help. Everyone there was helpful, and I learned what to do from DC United. Essentially, the Chicago Fire tried to replicate DC's success on and off the field. On the field, I hired their top assistant. I took Bruce Arena's top assistant, Bob Bradley, and he led us to the MLS Cup championship and the Open Cup. So we won the double in our first year. On the field, we could not have been more successful. Off the field, also, um, my department heads almost universally won their Executive of the Year awards in their department. I was fortunate to win the MLS Executive of the Year award, and a lot of that again was learning what to do, how to treat fans, how to build a community, and um, I'm very proud of that first year. So yeah, I was in Chicago for 8 years. It was 8 great years. Won in I think 4 championship rings with the Fire. Um, we won 4 Open Cups, Supporters Shield. We probably could have won a couple more MLS Cups, but you can't win them all.
yep, at least you got some in there. You've managed a lot of people, but before I even actually ask you that, you mentioned you learned what not to do, and those are very valuable lessons. What are 3 lessons that you could share with us today?
You always ask three.
I like 3 because I really off topic. I always relate 3 back to the Egyptian pyramids. So 3, it's a good number.
I'll certainly give you one, and it sticks out in my mind because it exemplifies where MLS was in 1997 and where it needed to go. It was in Kansas City at Arrowhead Stadium. I was shadowing their general manager, Tim Latta, and I overheard on the walkie-talkie a security person um, giving him some sort of information he wasn't happy about, and he told the security person to kick them out. I heard that loud and clear, and I was a little shocked. I hadn't seen anything in the stands that would warrant it, so I asked Tim what he was kicking fans out for, and he said, "Well, it's our supporters group in the Cauldron. They were throwing confetti again." I didn't understand, so I said, "Is that not a good thing?" He says, "No, no, no. Our deal with Arrowhead is we have to pay for the cleanup, and the confetti gets stuck to the ground, and it's really expensive to get that cleaned up. I was flabbergasted um, that they would kick out arguably your most important fans who are charged with creating a positive atmosphere for doing the exact thing you should want them to be doing. And that was a huge lesson. Similarly, in Colorado and frankly most of the other markets, teams were playing jock rock, um, and they were viewing supporter groups as a necessary evil, a nuisance. They were overplaying to families and trying to create um, a sterile atmosphere. And I learned from Kevin Payne and DC United in particular that that's not the future of the sport, that you need to let the fans be in charge, the fans create an atmosphere, and don't dictate to them how to be a fan.
Yeah, let it be organic.
Yeah. I also learned, if you want a second thing, is that MLS was being very successful in those first couple of years at manufacturing audiences, but they were not doing a good job, as you said, of allowing organic fan development. So their outreach to youth soccer was very good. They were a machine in the early days of collecting data and really pounding the phones. The New England Revolution, in particular, Lynn Meter Perel was a genius when it came to collecting data and then turning that data into ticket sales. But they were not good at retaining fans. In those early years of MLS, the turnover of season ticket base was close to a third, which meant every 3 years you had to reinvent your season ticket base. And it was because they were doing a good job of manufacturing one time audiences, but they weren't giving them reason to stay. The game experience was not special. Um, and when we started Chicago, we created a special experience, not just the play on the field, which was high level. It was really good quality. I mean, I think our third year in 2000, that team was actually better than the team that won the double in 98. The 2000 team had at least a dozen national team players on it, not all US. I mean, we Christo Stoichkov scored more goals than anyone else in the 1994 World Cup. Barcelona scoring legend, uh, and he wasn't even the best player on the team. With Peter Novak and uh, then so many U.S. national team stars. Chris Armas, the former captain of the U.S., our goalkeeper Zach Thornton, C.J. Brown, Jesse Marsh, all had U.S. national team experience. Josh Wolf and Ante Razov, two forwards with U.S. national team experience, and then the young up-and-coming U.S. stars Carlos Bocanegra and DeMarcus Beasley. So this was a loaded team with great coaching staff, and that was good. But the experience in the stands is arguably just as good or better. And part of it was a melting pot of fans. Certainly, there's a lot of Mexican fans because Chicago has a high Mexican immigrant population, but also a large Polish population. And in the stands, the Polish Ultras supporters group really knew how to lead a crowd and chant and get the excitement going and actually build on the fan base overall. Um, Christo Stoichkov brought out Bulgarian fans, so there's a lot of Eastern European support, and it went viral in Chicago. It just became a great atmosphere. So we didn't have to be manufacturing a crowd. I mean, we were collecting data and we were making phone calls and getting youth soccer groups, um, but it was really the um, organic fan base that created that atmosphere that made it the place to be. It changed when Soldier Field got renovated and we were temporarily evicted for 2 years. We scrambled to get a home in West Suburban Naperville, and we created a special relationship with the community there as well. But it was a different audience, and that was only for 2 years. And then we had to go back to Soldier Field and try to build back what we had lost. And in the meantime, we were working on building a new venue out in Bridgeview, which was the first 100% publicly funded soccer stadium in Major League Soccer. And then I left.
What quick question? What year was that for the crowdfunding?
What year was the what?
What year was that for the what year was crowdfunding taking place in?
There's no crowdfunding.
Oh, it was publicly raised dollars.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was publicly financed. The Village of Bridgeview paid for the entire facility, so that was 2003 to 2006. It opened in 2006.
Understood. You've managed a lot of people throughout your career. What's the most amount of people that you managed?
Oh gosh, I guess direct reports got up to about a dozen reporting to me, and that's probably too many. I think eight is the sweet spot, about the right number. As far as total staff, I've worked as few as two, including me, and that was the Minnesota Thunder. That was a matter of two full-time people. We had many more volunteers, interns, players doubling as camp directors, group sales directors, etc. And then with the fire, the largest the staff was with the fire, I think, was about 35, maybe 40 when I was there, which is small compared to what it is nowadays.
Yeah. Diving back into club ownership, could you just, for our viewers, could you just name the club and the year leading all the way up to 2023?
Oh gosh, my whole career. I mean, I started with the Milwaukee Wave in 1987. Was there till 90. Chicago Power till 94. Minnesota Thunder 94 to 97. Although I stayed on as an owner until we won the A-League championship in 99. But I left as an executive in 97 to join Chicago MLS in 97 until 2005. Although I stayed on their charitable board through 2006. And then Chicago Red Stars was essentially 2007 till 9, and then Milwaukee Wave again 2009 to 10. I had a short stint helping Major Indoor Soccer League out by starting an indoor team in Chicago to keep the league going, Chicago Riot, for one season. And then moved on to Indianapolis to launch Indy 11. It's there from 2012 to 2016, and then worked on launching Nisa, National Independent Soccer Association, 2016 to 2018, Forward Madison, 2018 till 2020, and then Chicago House, 2021 to the present.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned NISA, National Independent Soccer Association League it's a third division professional soccer league that you've created. Um, so I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong. So are you? Did you end up selling it, or um, to John and Josh Pruch, or could you, if you don't mind, could you share a little bit about that?
So my late business partner and I, Jack Cummins, started um, Nisa in 2016, 2017, and Jack passed away. And I went to Madison to launch Forward Madison. John Pruch and Bob Friedland stepped in and bought the assets uh, from me and Jack's estate.
Yeah, my condolences to Jack.
Thank you.
Um, that's amazing. So, would you say it was an uphill battle to launch Nisa? Um, you're going up against well, not you're going up against USL1. I'm not too sure if there is that uphill battle
So,
rest of that and
yeah, look,
challenges.
starting anything in soccer in America is an uphill battle. It's a
Yeah,
matter of
yeah,
degree. Um, this was an interesting one in that Jack and I weren't interested in starting our own league. We had been asked by the NASL and NPSL to launch a league to bridge those two. And they wanted to enact promotion and relegation. NASL was second division, NPSL was quasi fourth division. They needed a third division link. So we proposed this league, and in the end, they chose not to adopt it, and they encouraged us to launch it ourselves and indicated they would work with us and use it as the bridge. Um, Soccer wars being soccer wars, weird stuff happened, and the NASL is still trying to figure out in the courts what its future is. And um, NPSL um, went a different direction and didn't want to be linked to us either. And we were never really in competition. We didn't think we were in competition with USL. We were about independent soccer and an open system. And it just had different values, priorities, characteristics than the closed system leagues. So USL was really not what was limiting NISA. It was other open system and other independent leagues that wanted to control that space. And that was NPSL, UPSL, NASL, um, the Jacksonville Armada's owner, I believe, who was starting something called League X or something like that. So the soccer wars got a little crazy in 2016, and it led to me throwing up my hands and saying, "You do it." After Jack passed, and um, I went to safer waters in Madison.
understood. Um,
I'm glad you understand because I don't.
yeah, I mean, the landscape in the U.S. is fierce with the closed system with the MLS, and not there's a lot of conversation now with promotion relegation. But is it possible? Will it happen? Who knows? These are all question marks, and I'm really inspired by you, what you've accomplished, what you've done for the game, and um, and starting your own league is a huge accomplishment, and I'm intrigued to learn a bit more about that and ask a few more questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
Did you guys bootstrap the funding for this investment, or did you guys raise capital? And then how long was the process with the U.S. Soccer Foundation? No, U.S. Soccer
Federation.
Federation.
And I think that the sanctioning process for U.S. Soccer Federation took 2 to 3 years, I believe. Um, the funding of it wasn't raised while I was still there. That was after I left, and in part, that's why they wanted to buy Jack and my shares so they could sell that to Bob Friedland, and he largely funded it. The original teams also helped fund it by buying small shares in the league. And I personally disagree about the percentages of the ownership. I think teams should own and control the leagues, not third parties. But that's easier said than done when you're looking for the funds to operate it.
You mentioned the NASL league. I'm not too sure if this attaches to Nisa, some court case. Please correct what I'm saying. And will that close? Is there a timeline on that?
I just read this week that um, it's moving forward, and it's been 5 years, I believe, and I think they're hopeful of getting it to closure in the next year or two.
So what would be the pros if it goes good and cons if it doesn't?
Well, I think um, those who advocate for an open system want to see the pro league standards uh, either eliminated or adjusted to allow for different ownership models. I mean, right now it's very narrow definition of who can, what the ownership structure of a team, pro team in the U.S. can look like. And I think, regardless of how this litigation is settled, I think there will be significant changes to the pro league standards that will benefit the sport. I think it will allow community ownership. It'll allow nonprofit ownership. And I think uh, both of those examples, whether it's community writ large or multiple individuals, uh, provides different ways of having a successful ownership structure. I don't think there's any one model. I mean, if you look around the world, there are many models of successful ownership structure. And, perhaps that narrow definition needed to be done at a certain point in the sports evolution in this country, but uh, now's not the time.
Got it. Could you share the structure that you guys um, used to set up the league? Like, how did you guys? I'm trying to think in regards. How did you guys structure that? Did you guys do a series LLC?
Yes, so there's an LLC with A shares, B shares, C shares. The A shares were the teams, the B teams, the B shares were the league founders, and the C shares were third party shares that would raise a significant amount of money. And then each of those share groups had different voting power.
Got it. 2019, you were at USL fan engagement for 6 months. You've seen under the hood between Nisa and USL. Do when owners or if owners do, I'm just putting something out there. Um, when when they contact you, do they ask you, "Hey, what league should we join?" Um, and do you have a preference? Are you biased?
Well, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I think it depends on what the investor is looking for. USL is tremendous league. It has great teams. It has great infrastructure. It's great management, um, and, and Nisa has its own assets and positives. Um, I think much of the determination of the success or the failure of any individual team is based on their local decisions. You can be successful in USL, you can fail in USL. You can be successful in Nisa, you can fail in Nisa. And same with markets. Is there a good market or bad market? They're all good markets if you go about it the right way, and they're all bad markets if you go about it the wrong way. But USL provides tremendous support and resources. Um, I don't know that there's another league in the world, MLS included, that has the infrastructure and the team assistance that USL has. Um, but it is a closed system. So if that's important to an investor, and not just promotion relegation, um, but um, territorial exclusivity. Personally, I think the sport is better off without territorial exclusivity. I think um, the two Chattanoogas should be playing against each other.
Yeah.
And I think that rivalry would be ramped up and there'd be more interest. As they say, the pie would grow in Chattanooga if they were part of the same league and they're playing each other and competing to eventually be promoted or relegated. And open system has elements like solidarity payments, training compensation. Open system, the true open system, has the teams owning the league and having an equal say in determining the direction of all issues. And there's no league in this country that's pure in terms of an open system. There's some that are better structured than others. But yeah, sure, I have opinions on each of the leagues. I have good things to say about each of the leagues, and I probably have negative things to say about each of the leagues as well. But that's just human nature, and it doesn't mean I'm right or I'm wrong on any of them. It's just my opinion.
Understood. With all the data and experience that you have now, what do you see happening in the near future? We have, one of the biggest events coming, 2026 World Cup, which is huge. What are you seeing?
Yeah, you're right. 2026 is going to be literally a game changer for the sport in this country. I think women's soccer is going to have an explosion in the next half decade or so. And then I think mid-sized cities are going to have an explosion as well. Um, you know, there's still frontiers out there for the sport. And I think these small and mid-sized cities are part of that. Rural America is part of that. Small town America is part of it. And the growth over the next 10 years is going to be phenomenal. And the spotlight that 2026 is going to shine on the sport will serve as a fertilizer for that growth. Um, there'll continue to be these soccer wars, battles between leagues looking to carve out their own space. And, this country is big enough to support more than one model, more than one league. Um, so I don't think it's necessarily a winner take all battle. I would love to see a real open system. Certainly, I want to see promotion relegation, and I'm convinced that will happen. I'm encouraged that USL is making steps towards that. I think they're probably finding out it's, again, easier said than done. Not that they ever thought it was going to be easy, but it is a challenge because you're trying to insert essentially a new model into an existing model, and making those adjustments isn't always easy. But I think there will be a lot of success. Um, it's mainstreaming. You know, the sport in the U.S. will never be mainstream among people that look like me. old, male, and white. But among younger people, it is already mainstreamed, and it's exciting. It's wonderful to see, and it's only going to get more successful. You look how far the sport has grown in the last 10 years, and that's just going to be uh, even faster in the next 10 years.
Absolutely. We're getting a a little taste of it, or a big taste, from the man himself, Leo Messi, the GOAT that they say in MLS. What,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on Messi?
Every time there's a major event or milestone character in the sport in this country, it shines a light on the sport. It grows the interest for a period, and then that event or that player moves on, and then interest will wane, but it doesn't go down as far as it went up. So what ends up happening, the sport has an evolution as opposed to a revolution. And Americans, for as long as I've been around, have been waiting for the revolution. The revolution doesn't happen, at least not overnight. It's more of an evolution. So you have this trajectory of going up and then down a little, but it goes up further than it went down. And then over time, the interest increases. And you see it in the Gallup poll when they ask that simple question, what's your favorite spectator sport? And over the last 50 years, soccer has gone from being negligible to passing hockey and on the cusp of passing baseball, and not too far from passing basketball. While football, American football, is going down, but still way above any other sport, including hockey and basketball and baseball in this country. Um, the challenge for soccer, professional soccer in America, is getting those people that now care about the sport to care about the domestic version of the sport. Because when they say now more people in America care about soccer, or their favorite sport to watch is soccer, than even baseball, they're not talking about MLS. MLS was part of it. They're really talking about La Liga, Premiership, Bundesliga, and the Mexican League, Liga MX. So that's the challenge: is create teams domestically where the local fans will care about them. And we've seen some of that success here and there. The Seattles and Portlands and Atlantas um, and Phoenix and Indianapolis. And there's in Madison and Chattanooga and Detroit. So it's not just first division, and it's not just men. What Angel City has done, what San Diego Wave has done, is really tremendous. And the seeing the price of expansion teams in NWSL is an indicator of that level of interest growing in the women's game. And what the Super League is doing, the USL's First Division Women's League, could dwarf what the NWSL is doing because it has the potential for many, many more markets than NWSL, and cumulatively can make a bigger impact on the sport than even NWSL can. So I'm really bullish on that. And then there's room in the lower tiers of women's soccer that I know WPSL is trying to fill, and UWS is trying to fill, and others. So the sport will continue to grow, and it's really exciting, and I'm fortunate to have been part of it for the past 35 years.
Yeah, I wanted to highlight 35 years, wow, 3 decades, long time. I wanted to highlight Matt Retta here from USL. He said that to me one time that stuck with me. There's a lot of juice in the orange to squeeze in the soccer space here in the US. Would you agree with that?
In a way, yes, but I would say that there's a lot more juice being added to the orange uh, in terms of greater interest in the sport is being added. And that's coming from multiple sources, including immigration. I mean, the people immigrating to this country are coming from countries that have a passion for soccer already. So those folks are bringing more juice to this orange. And then kids growing up, kids playing FIFA video games, kids playing soccer. They're the kids watching the sport globally on television. They're growing into it. So maybe 10 years ago, 50% of 8-year-olds in America cared about watching soccer. And that's probably an exaggeration. Maybe 50% cared about playing soccer. They didn't necessarily care about watching it. But as we go on, day by day, month by month, year by year, decade by decade, that percentage increases the number of kids that care about watching the sport, and both watching the sport globally and locally. And, you know, the opportunity, the challenge to get them to care about the local team. You've got some incredible local soccer stories going on, in addition to the ones I mentioned in Detroit and Oakland and Phoenix and Atlanta and Portland and Seattle. You've got the NPSL stories, much of them connected with Michael Hitchcock's clubs. Annapolis, Maryland. Um, they've gotten quite a bit of publicity this year, but not nearly as much as they should. That's a success story that's indicative of the potential of the sport in small and medium-sized cities that don't have it. Large markets, we're pretty much getting to the end of the rope as far as what large markets don't have pro soccer teams. Off the top of my head, it might be 4 or 5. Baltimore and USL's coming for Baltimore. Milwaukee, USL's coming to Milwaukee. Cleveland, I think USL's coming there. New Orleans, Buffalo. After that, I don't know that you've got any million population cities that won't have pro soccer in them. Maybe I missed one or two here or there, but the markets that really have the opportunity are the small and medium sized markets, 500 to 750,000, or even 250,000 to 500,000. I mean, these success stories in Chattanooga and Madison, these are 300,000 to 500,000 population markets. So it's exciting, and there's more juice being added to the orange. But Matt's right. We haven't gotten everything out of what we have.
Yeah, I know we're coming close up here on time. Did you have an extra few minutes?
Absolutely.
Um,
You can always edit out some of the dumb stuff I said.
okay, we'll do. Um,
That could get you down to half an hour.
okay. Um, you know, I would like to thank Fred Mattis for setting this up, for helping set this up. Um, you wrote a blog talking about markets, and a lot of these markets didn't have teams when you wrote that blog. So you're pretty spot on with the markets that you mentioned in that blog. What are some indicators that you look for when selecting a market?
Gosh, that was back in 2016. Uh, Venues are always important. The right type of venue, the right location for the venue, uh, the demographics. Certainly, the higher the foreign-born population, the better chance of success. The younger the demographics, the better chance of success. Um, Homegrown, meaning the higher the percentage of people that grew up in that community, usually is an indicator that it'll be successful. And that's because the people that live in those markets grow up with an affinity, a passion for their town. So when there's a sports team representing that town, they'll be more likely to support that soccer team as opposed to a random team in England or Germany or somewhere else in the world. Um, Generally in the United States, those high percentage of homegrown populations are in the north and the east. The Sun Belt and the West Coast obviously has a high transient population. A lot of people moving from the north to the south, so they didn't grow up living in Las Vegas. Um, so if Las Vegas has a team, that team won't necessarily represent who they are. If they grew up in Cleveland and then moved out to Las Vegas, they may not really care about the local soccer team.
Got it. Just leading towards the end, um, coming towards Chicago House Athletic Club. Shout out Matt Poland. He coached me at Naples United FC and then PSL. He's a great guy. I love Matt. Um, what are your goals for this club?
We're a development team. We want to develop players, develop coaches, develop administrators, and we want to represent our community. And we have a mission to make Chicago a better place for all. Um, we're very proud that in 2022, our first season as an amateur team, we moved 9 of our rostered players onto pro contracts. So the team that qualified for the U.S. Open Cup in 2023 was a different team than played in the Open Cup in 2023 because we had lost 9 of our players. But we're happy about that. That's served our mission. This year, in 2023, I think we already have 3 or 4 players that have moved on with pro contracts, and I'm sure we'll have more before next year's Open Cup. And we've succeeded with that. And by the way, that includes coaches. I don't want Matt Poland to be our coach next year. I love him as much or more than you do. And I cannot believe what great things he's done for Chicago House. But he's earned his way to be a coach with a professional team. And I'm hoping by next spring, he'll have either an assistant coach with position with an MLS or USL Championship team, or a head coaching job with the USL League One team. Uh, I mean, he is quality, and he's had an opportunity to use Chicago House as a bit of an incubator for his coaching, and it's served its purpose. I'm really proud of what he's done. Brian Koenig, our chief operating officer, he's learning how to be a successful administrator. And we've got a great staff that does great work. Players are across the board. We've had high school players, college players, post-college players, um, players from outside the U.S., from outside Chicago, from Chicago's neighborhoods. And we're proud of the work that House is doing.
Nice. Just to end off, I have 6 fun speed questions. Is that cool with you?
Ready? Go.
What's your favorite sport besides soccer?
Ultimate Frisbee.
Favorite team in the US?
Ha! Soccer team?
Yes.
I'll say White Sox. You just asked me favorite team in the U.S.
Okay.
White Sox.
Be specific. What's your favorite soccer team?
Oh gosh, I'll say Chicago House.
Who's your favorite soccer player in the US?
Oh gosh, A.R. Smith.
And what's your favorite type of music to listen to?
I'm a uh, late '70s, early '80s punker.
Favorite food?
Grilled cheese sandwich.
And what's your favorite activity?
Activity. I'm currently obsessed with counting my steps. Um, I increased my number by 1,000 a day
Yep.
each month. So this last month, August, was 12,000 steps a day. We're starting September. I'm up to 13,000 steps a day. So I like to go hiking, like to walk along the beach or in the woods or in neighborhoods. So it's walking.
Got it. I thought you were going to say golfing.
I'm an awful golfer. I golf once a year in a real golf outing, a charity golf outing. I do golf pitch and putt 2 or 3 times a year. I love mini golf. but no, golfing's not. I enjoy watching golf, which is odd, and I'm boycotting the PGA because of their marriage with Live, and so the PGA is connected to the senior PGA, so I can't watch them either with my boycott. But I researched and I found out the LPGA is not connected to the PGA, from my understanding. So I'm starting to become a fan of the LPGA. And Rose Zhang is my favorite LPGA golfer.
Yeah. Well, now you're speaking a language that I don't know or understand yet. Maybe I'll get into it later. But uh, Peter, this was great. It was great to connect with you, hear the stories, and hopefully, maybe in the near future, I could shadow you for a day or something. That'd be great insight and learn a lot from you, as I've learned a lot on this call. And I appreciate you taking the time for joining me on the One Soccer Nation podcast today.
My pleasure, Kareem. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you.